Welcome to Grandpa Snippets number 14. A couple weeks back was Halloween. I have a lot of Halloween stories I could tell you, but I have to be careful. I don't let my memories take over because the older you get, the more stories you have, the more things you remember, the more things you can share. All I can say is we'll just have to get over popcorn sometime and we'll just sit down and share some of the Halloween stories, which some of you already know. And some are funny, and yeah, but we're going to skip Halloween stories for now. I have some other things to tell you at the end. I am glad that they have put some guidelines on Halloweening, though, celebrating, like community parades and costume contests and a select set time for trick-or-treating. I remember when I was a kid, boy, we were just anxious for trick-or-treat to come around, really anxious. There was no set time for trick-or-treat, so we would doll ourselves up. And I remember one time just scarecrows and whatever, and we would trick-or-treat for a week. And I feel sorry for the people. I look back across them now, but people, they weren't watching television, didn't have it to watch, so we weren't interrupting any programs, but probably their evening, whatever they were doing. But we were just happy to get anything for a whole week. We would go around to the same people if they were giving. If we got a penny, we got popcorn, an apple, a cracker, even a cracker. It was an excellent time it was just like, it was our second Christmas for kids. It was like the second Christmas. You could trick or treat all week long. Well, when I think of Halloween, though, I think of what comes to mind was witches and black cats and ghosts and pumpkins and skeletons and bats and so forth. But maybe sometimes snakes. I hate snakes. They're creepy and crawly, and I don't really care for them. They are sinister. What created that feeling between us and the snake? In Genesis 3, verse 15, Genesis 3:15, it says, God said he would put enmity or a fear between the serpent and man, that they would not really get together. The serpent, because he was involved in the fall of Adam and Eve, but Adam and Eve also, they participated, so it was their fault. But the snake's venom is very poisonous, very deadly. And in 2 Timothy 2:26, 2 Timothy 2:26 says, many are taken captive by him, the serpent, at his will. Well, unless we are protected with the blood of Christ, yes, we are very open to him. We still are, but we have the blood of Christ to protect us. And so we need to be a part of God's family to help us against the venom that he spews out. For if you look in 2 Timothy, the 3rd chapter, first 5 verses, 2 Timothy 3:1-5, you see the results of what his venom can do through an individual and what it does to society. Actually, how do you kill a snake? I will show you here. I'll get him. There we go, I got him. You take a snake and you crush his head. That's how you kill a snake. And that is, kind of dirt on him. That's how you kill a snake. I'm going to get him out of the road here. I don't really like him. So, there is a promise in the Bible that Christ is going to crush the serpent's head and destroy him and put an end to his venom he spews out. And so I have seen some interesting personal snake stories, which I will share with you later. But we know that the serpent was used as an instrument by Satan to deceive Adam and Eve in the garden. In Genesis 3, verse 1, it says the serpent was more subtle or crafty than any of the other beasts of the field. The beasts of the field elevated him in the cattle position, so to speak. And we're not sure when God cursed him how he got around. But Genesis 3:14 says, "From now on you will crawl on your belly and eat dust." So apparently he was able to walk. Scientists tell us that there are some places on the snake's body where it looked like he used to have appendages, which he could be more or less walk upright or walk. And but God then cursed him to crawl on his belly. Apparently he must have been a beautiful creature, walked with the cattle. But now God has taken and caused him to become a serpent, and we have enmity, a fear between us. So God put enmity between man and the serpent, made a fear factor there. In the Genesis 3, verse 15, in that promise that God would have his son crush his head, we see the seed of woman is Christ, who comes and takes the serpent, crushes his head at the cross, kills the snake, so to speak. So you say, if Christ defeated or crushed Satan at the cross, what in the world is going on in our nation? What in the world is going on in the world where people call evil good and good evil and darkness white and black just vice versa? What is going on? As it seems like things are kind of falling apart. Here's a story I heard. Missionary lady on the foreign field went into her kitchen and there was a large snake. And she ran out and she got the neighbor and she said, "There's a snake in my house." And he said, "I'll take care of it." He went in and grabbed the snake, cut its head off. And he came out and they could hear the threshing and the smashing around of the snake. And the lady said, "What is wrong if you cut his head off? Why?" And he said, "Well, his head has been crushed. It's been defeated. But his body hasn't got the message yet. And it's still thrashing and carrying on." So Satan, the old serpent, is still threshing in the world, still causing all this lawlessness and all this things that are going on. But we have good news that in Revelation chapter 12 and 9, where he's called the serpent, but in Revelation 20 and verse 2, he is completely defeated. And the threshing that he's doing, Satan is going to come back at the end of the tribulation and take him and put him in a pit where he can no longer attack and cause the disruption to mankind that he's causing today. He's chained and he's put in a pit. But then in Revelation 20 and 10, his final destination is not in a pit but in the lake of fire, which is reserved for the damned. When I was 16 years old, I took part in a talent program contest. They were singing, there was musicians, there was art, there was poetry, there was speaking. Well, I decided I would have my part or take part in the speaking, and I did. No, I didn't win, but it was an exciting opportunity to learn some things. But the subject I chose was sin is to blame. I can still remember part of that 5-minute speech. And it has always been true. Sin is to blame, no matter big or small. I remember the story of a little boy who wanted to go fishing. And he turned over a rock. He was looking for fishing worms. And he pulled out what he thought was fishing worms. It kept biting him a little bit, just little things. And he put them in a can. He died. And they checked to see what. And they found out he had a can full of little teeny baby rattlesnakes. Even though they were teeny, they were very poisonous. So Numbers chapter 21 of Scripture, Numbers 21, we find that the children of Israel go through life, they're doing a lot of complaining to God. He has given them manna, and they're getting tired of eating manna every morning, noon, and night. And even though in the desert, there's no food, but he's providing food for them. And they start complaining about the hand that was feeding them. let me read to you Numbers 21, verses 5, maybe through 9, and it'll show what we're talking about, where it says, "And the people spake against God, and said against Moses, Wherefore have ye brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there's no bread, neither is there any water, and our souls hates this light bread. And the Lord sent fiery serpents, snakes, among the people, and they bit the people, and much people died. Therefore the people came to Moses and said, We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against thee. Pray unto the Lord that he'll take away these snakes. And Moses prayed for the people. And the Lord said unto Moses, Make thee a fiery serpent or a snake, and put it on a pole. And it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. Moses made a serpent, a snake of brass, and put it on a pole. It came to pass that if a serpent bit any man, when he had beheld a serpent of brass, he lived." Looking at that picture, we see that God made a way of escape. What he did, he took and had him put up a pole. And on a pole, put a brass serpent. We know exactly what that looks like. It looks like the cross. It was foreseen in the Old Testament. So if anybody looked to the serpent, they would be saved. If they didn't, they would die. In the New Testament, it tells us in the book of Matthew and John that we are to look to the cross, look to Christ, and we will be saved. If we don't, we will not. And brass also, which was made out of, the serpent made out of brass, was a sign of judgment. Brass stood for judgment. And so God took our judgment on the cross, and we look to him by faith. And where that is recorded is in John chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. John 3, 14 and 15, where it says, as Moses lifted up the serpent or the snake in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, who puts faith in that, shall not perish but have everlasting life. And that verse comes just before John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. So sin required judgment, and brass is the symbol of judgment. And if you looked, you were saved. If you didn't, you were not. So it's a pretty clear object lesson that God gave us. So Christ takes our punishment and made it possible for us to live for God. So when we look to Christ, it's more than our eyes here looking, it's eyes of our soul. And the scriptures say we have eyes of the soul for more looking to God in faith for what he's doing for us. In Hebrews 12:2, let me share my last verse with you. Hebrews 12:2 says, looking with the eyes of faith, looking to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. He endured the cross, hung on the cross as judgment for us, because he wants the joy of us, as we said in our last snippet, to share that election with him in heaven. But Hebrews 10:38 says, the just shall live by faith, and the just shall see by faith. So keep your faith strong, keep looking to Christ, and he will take care of your spiritual need. Now, I said I would close with some snake stories. I've got probably a dozen, 2 dozen of them, but I just selected 5. Won't take that long. My first snake story is back in the 30s. There were a lot of bathrooms, but they were outside. We called them outhouses, and there was that little path that always went to the outhouse, well-worn path. And one day my sister went to the outhouse, probably 4 years old, And she never came back, and never came back. And my mother said, go check on your sister, see what's happening to Eleanor. So I went and I checked, and I just peeked in, cracked in, and I could see it was a larger outhouse, and she was standing over in the corner, and in this corner, opposite her, was a snake all curled up, just looking at her. And she wasn't moving, and the snake was just eyeing her. So I ran in the house and told Mom. Mom came, took care of the snake. Story ended well. Second story about a snake was, we lived near Seneca Lake, and off of Seneca Lake there were creeks and little tributaries, or whatever you call the things, and fish would come back in these, and I wanted to go fishing one day. It was only about 3 blocks from my house. So I took my pole, went down, probably first or second grade, and threw my bait and everything in the water, and I sat on the bank there fishing, and I looked across the bank, probably 12 feet across maybe, and down across the bank comes this snake, slithers into the water, and starts swimming right directly toward me. That's all I wanted. Left the pole lay, and I just ran home and stayed there. Well, I thought, well, the next day I better go back and get my fishing pole. Went back, it was still there, and I pulled it in and had just a little bluegill on it. So that's my second snake story. Third is, I didn't even have to leave the house to come onto a snake. Right at the side of the house was a big apple tree, and a nice swing on it. I like to go out there and swing and swing and swing, and I was swinging one day, and I looked down about time to get off, and here a snake had crawled just where my feet would land and was sunning himself. And so I thought, well, I can't jump on him. So I slowed down just enough so I could leap off and run into the house. I'm glad where I live now, I don't see hardly any snakes. Haven't seen a snake for months. So I'm glad for that. And when I was in junior high, this is funny. When I was in junior high, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have picked the thing up for anything in the world. But down along the river, one of the boys got a gardener snake, or one of those harmless snakes, brought it, put it in his pocket, brought it in, and put it on the back of the study hall. There was rows of books. And on the rows of books, he placed this snake. And where he placed the snake, it was definitely sure that pretty soon there would be somebody go back, especially girls went back to the books. Somebody would go back to the books and run into that snake. This one girl was sitting there, and everybody most boys knew it was there. And this girl gets up, goes back, starts to go to check out the books, and she she reaches up to get this book, and here's this snake looking straight at her in her eyes. She screams bloody murder, throws the book one direction and ran another, and I don't know whether the snake died of fright or what, but anyway, I don't know what happened at that point. I think the boy got in trouble, but yeah. Let me give you another snake story. This is my favorite kind of snake story. It's about a dead snake story, a dead snake. My mother was cousin to a missionary from Africa. His name was Kilpatrick or Kirkpatrick, and he had come back on furlough from from Africa, and while he was gone on his trip, I heard many stories about what was going on with him. So it was a joy, just as a kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, who went to Camp Syker, which was a church camp that they held in the summer, and he had pitched up 2 tents. I would say, if I would estimate them, they were maybe 7 feet wide and maybe 7, 8 feet tall. I don't know. And I remember there were white tents. 2 white tents kind of stood next to each other. And he had taken and killed a snake, skinned the snake, and preserved its skin and rolled it up. I never saw it rolled up. It must have been quite a big thing, because when he unrolled it, it draped over the first tent. Its tail was touching the ground, over the first tent down, and those tents were a little apart, down into the second one, and over in his head was draping off the second tent. And so it was dead, it was gone. And I was thrilled for that type of a story, because dead snakes are the best kind of snakes. But in my eyes as a kid, they was huge. But so let me remember you of safety from the devil, safety from the serpent that comes through Christ. You can be a victor because he is the crusher. And with his power, you can crush his attacks at you. For greater is he that's in you than he that's in the world. You're greater than the serpent. So stay true to the Lord and follow him. And I hope you don't have any snake dreams tonight. I hope you sleep well and that everything goes well with you. See you next time.